Good afternoon. Here in episode 7 of the engines that didn't sell, I've got a beautiful example of a 1958 McCord Spitfire 65. Now this engine has got pretty long and storied history. In fact, it was actually designed by a man named Bill Anderson back earlier than 1958, and he was one of the first designers of glow-powered engines way back in the, I think it was the late 30s or so. But I mean, this is an engine that has a very interesting history as far as how it came to me, and I'll post the I only made 2 videos of this engine, and I'll post those 2 links on the screen here at the end so that you can go and watch both of those videos. But it's got a very interesting history. This is an engine that I only ran one time, and the reason I didn't sell it was because it was never advertised to be sold. This was an engine I never really intended on getting rid of, and unfortunately, or I won't say unfortunately, but even if I were to sell it, this is one that I would want to make money on because of its history, its condition. It's not complete with a box, but it is a complete engine. And in fact, if you notice here, the videos that I made on this engine, it did not have this bubble fuel tank on here. That's something that I added at the end because a good friend of mine, Ron, here locally, he saw my video on this engine and he said, you know what, I think I've got some parts for this. So I went and checked them out and I bought them, and that was what it was. So I basically just put that on there just to display. It never ran with that tank on there, but that is what it would have looked like had it had that tank. But this particular variant, I found an advertisement for it from 1968 from some magazine, and it was showing it just like this without the tank. So I think the tank was maybe when it was an ignition engine, because these actually started out as ignition engines before being converted to glow. But if I recall correctly, the story went Bill Anderson, I think it was Bill Anderson who designed this, sold this, his patent or his, all these parts for these engines, and then another gentleman, McCord, actually bought these parts and started putting engines together in the late 50s and selling them as the McCord Spitfire. But this is a 65 version, and as you can see here, it ran pretty well for what it was. I wasn't really trying to do a whole lot of tuning with it, and I wasn't concerned with breaking it in properly because it was going to be run this one time just for the viewers and subscribers and for myself, and that was it. But if you take a look here, here's what it looked like and sounded like when it ran. So it was a really loud engine. It ran acceptably, I guess, but I had no baseline for, RPM figures for a given prop or anything like that, because information on this engine was just so difficult to come by. And actually I was lucky that I think it was John, a friend of mine, John, that actually led me to the link that actually showed me where I could see these advertisements for when this was sold through a magazine. And I just took PDF or screenshots of those things and saved them into my folder for this. And I can actually post one of them here. So you can see, I'm not sure how well that's going to work out on this video or not. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that. But it is pretty interesting. But this was all original, and it wasn't gummed up at all. When I got this thing, it did not smell like it had ever been run, and it was perfectly free. So that was really cool, because then that also tells me that this was not one of those engines that was pre-run at the factory. I think what was happening was McCord was maybe just putting these things together and just selling them, because if it had been run at the factory, this thing would have been tight as a rock, but it wasn't. So anyway, that's my McCord Spitfire 65 and why it didn't sell. Hope you enjoyed watching.